$370,000. That's the equipment inside this laundromat. 45 washers, 48 dryers installed in 2020. The seller wants $600,000 for all of it. But after expenses, the business only leaves $58,000 a year. So here's the only question that matters. Are you buying a business? Or are you buying expensive metal? Welcome to the Equipment Trap. Harris County, Texas. A 4,500 square foot laundromat, 93 machines, 4 employees, run completely absentee, $600,000 to take it over. And almost every word in this listing points you toward the same thing: the equipment. So let's start where the seller starts: the machines. On paper, this looks like a fortress. This is Texas, and in Texas, everything is supposed to be bigger. Bigger buildings, bigger machine count, a bigger price tag than almost any laundromat we've looked at so far. Electrolux washers and dryers installed in 2020. The seller values them at $370,000. Then comes the line designed to close the deal. Replacing a facility like this from scratch, $600,000 to $900,000. The listing calls that a barrier to entry, which simply means it's hard to build and expensive to copy. Then it says the business has meaningful underlying asset value. The machines, the plumbing, the build-out, they're all supposed to be worth something. It's a good story, but there's one problem. A machine can be expensive and still doesn't make you any money. So the real question was never what the machines cost. The real question is, what do they actually earn? Let's start with the simplest test there is. How long to get your money back? $600,000 in, $58,000 a year out. Over 10 years. A 9.6% return. That doesn't sound terrible until you remember everything riding on it. 4 people on payroll. $67,000 a year in rent. Repairs, utilities, insurance. But the 10-year payback isn't the real danger. The problem is, how long do you actually get to try? The lease expires in the fall of 2028. Just over 2 years from now. So line up the numbers. Time to break even. Over 10 years. Time left on the current lease. Roughly 2 years. The location might continue, but the rent that makes the deal work, nobody's promising that survives. Because the moment that option kicks in, the landlord holds the pen. They hike the rent to market rates, and just like that, your break-even point vanishes into thin air. And about that rent, this laundromat hands $67,000 a year to the landlord on revenue of $222,000. That's 30 cents of every revenue dollar. Rent alone takes 30% of the business. In the laundromat industry, once rent gets above 20 to 25% of revenue, it starts raising some serious questions. This one is already past the line. And the lease that locks that rent in, it expires before you'd even break even. Now back to the machines. The $370,000 this entire deal leans on. They were installed in 2020, so they're not old. That's exactly why this listing feels safe. But your payback happens more than 10 years from now. And by then, the machines that look modern in this listing are deep into their second decade. So the very same equipment used to justify the price today quietly becomes the replacement bill tomorrow. Because commercial laundry equipment may last 15, maybe 20 years, depending on the model, usage, and maintenance. So by the time you finally approach break even and start to generate some money, these machines are at the end of their life. Which means right as the business starts to pay you back, you're staring at another $370,000. Equipment isn't an asset that pays you. It's actually a clock counting down. So strip away the story and let's run some numbers. Revenue. $222,000. Take out the rent. Take out 4 salaries. Take out utilities, repairs, supplies, insurance. What reaches the owner? $58,000. 26 cents of every dollar. And if this place is open 16 hours a day, that works out to about $9.96 an hour. That's all there is for the person who paid for everything. So add it all together, $370,000 in machines that age. A payback that takes over 10 years. A lease term that ends in just over 2 years. Rent swallowing 30 cents of every dollar. And 26 cents left for the owner. The seller calls all that equipment a barrier to entry. Maybe it is. But to us, it looks a lot more like a barrier to profit. Because this isn't really a laundromat. It's a $600,000 bet that the machines, the lease, and the numbers all hold together long enough to pay you back. Trap. Here's what we learned from this listing. Shiny equipment is not the same thing as profit. A laundromat packed with modern machines can still be a bad business because machines don't pay you. The math does. We've now looked at 4 laundromats, each wearing a different disguise. And each time, the numbers told a different story. And if you've seen a listing that doesn't add up, drop it in the comments. And if this one saved you from buying someone else's countdown clock, hit subscribe.